The Adventures of the Chicago City Musicians.
Once upon a time in a small village, there was a donkey named Sam. He was old and tired from all the work he had to do for his owner. One day, Sam decided he had had enough. He thought about how sad and lonely he felt and how little his work was appreciated. "It's time for a change," he grumbled to himself. In the same village lived a dog named Spike, who had once been a proud hunting dog. But over the years, he had become less useful and was often neglected. His owner had acquired a younger, more energetic dog, and Spike was left on his own. "I deserve a better life," Spike whimpered. In a small barn nearby lived a cat named Kira. She was a skilled mouse hunter, but her owner had brought in a new cat, younger and more agile. Kira felt unnecessary and lonely. "I want to experience something new," she meowed softly. Finally, in the village, there was a rooster named Ken. He had once proudly announced the morning, but lately, he had grown old and hoarse. His owner was ashamed of the noise Ken made and had already made plans to get rid of him. "I won't allow myself to be discarded so easily," Ken crowed defiantly. One evening, with the moon in the sky and the stars shining brightly, the four animals met on a path leading out of the village. Each of them had the same thought. They wanted to get away from their old owners and start a new life. They decided to work together and embark on this adventure as a team. "We could go to Chicago," Sam suggested. The other animals enthusiastically agreed, and so the four friends set out for Chicago. Along the way, they encountered a group of robbers sitting around a campfire, dividing their loot. The robbers were startled when they saw the animals shining in the moonlight. "What are these strange creatures?" one of the robbers asked. "These can't be ordinary animals," another robber replied. "They must be magical." The robbers were afraid of the seemingly magical animals and ran away, leaving their loot behind. Sam, Spike, Kira, and Ken laughed about the incident and continued on their way to Chicago. Upon reaching Chicago, they spotted a large old house with a sign that read "City Musicians Wanted." They decided to apply and entered the house. The owner of the house was a friendly man who immediately recognized that these animals were not ordinary. "What can you play?" he asked. "I can play my guitar," Sam said and strummed a cheerful tune. "I can bark and sing," explained Spike and happily barked. "I can meow and whistle," purred Kira, showcasing her impressive voice. "I can crow and wake up the morning," Ken crowed, letting out his powerful call. The house owner was thrilled and immediately hired the four animals as Chicago City musicians. They lived happily in Chicago, playing music every day for the people in the city. The people loved their performances and rewarded them with food and a cozy place to sleep. Sam, Spike, Kira, and Ken had found their new home and were happy to be together. They sang, danced, and played for the people in Chicago and became the most famous musicians in the city. And so ended the story of the Chicago City musicians, who had set out together to find a better life and, in doing so, realized their dreams and became a happy family. They proved that friendship and cooperation can overcome any challenge.
Max and Felix, a tale of friendship and perseverance.
Once upon a time, in a peaceful forest, lined with trees and filled with birds, there lived a young hare named Max. Max was known for his speed and pride. He loved to run through the forest and boasted about being the fastest hare far and wide. Every day he challenged the other animals of the forest to races and won every time. One day, as Max once again bragged about being the fastest runner in the forest, the wise hedgehog named Felix shook his head. "Max, you may be fast, but you are also reckless and arrogant," Felix said. "There's more to life than just winning races." Max simply laughed and said, "Felix, you are way too slow to compete with me. You'll never understand how exciting it is to be the best." Felix sighed quietly and walked away. But he had a plan. He knew he couldn't run as fast as Max, but he was clever and resourceful. He began to think of how he could challenge Max in a different way. One day, all the animals of the forest gathered to watch Max and Felix in a race. Tension filled the air as the animals were curious to see if the slow Felix had a chance against the swift Max. The race was to circle around the forest and return to the starting point. Max was confident and full of hubris, while Felix appeared calm and focused. The two animals stood side by side, ready to start. "Let's go!" shouted the squirrel referee, and the race began. Max sprinted ahead and took an immediate lead. He was moving so fast he could hardly see the trees and bushes in the forest. Felix, on the other hand, moved calmly and thoughtfully. He knew he couldn't keep up with Max when it came to speed, but he had a different plan in mind. He followed Max but remained steady and focused on his path. As the race progressed, Max began to feel more secure. He was far ahead of Felix and started to slow down, hopping around to entertain the spectators. Felix, however, seized his opportunity. He curled up into a ball and rolled down the hill on his back, leading directly to the finish line. The other forest animals noticed what he was doing and started cheering and started cheering. Max heard the cheering and looked around in confusion. When he saw that Felix had already reached the finish line, he rushed there as fast as he could, but it was too late. Felix had won the race. The other animals cheered for Felix and congratulated him on his clever victory. Max was humble and embarrassed. He had learned that speed wasn't everything. Cleverness and resourcefulness could be just as important. Felix approached Max and smiled. "Max, that was fun, wasn't it?" he said. "We may be different, but we can still be friends." Max nodded and smiled back. "You're right, Felix." From that day on, Max and Felix became best friends. They spent their days together, learning from each other and helping each other. Max became more modest, and Felix became bolder. And so they lived happily and contentedly in the forest, where they had proven that true strength doesn't always lie in speed, but in friendship and the willingness to learn from one another. The tale of Max and Felix teaches us that it's not about who's the fastest. True strength lies in cleverness, friendship, and cooperation. It's an important lesson for all of us, no matter our age.